Hi, everybody. Welcome back. Today, we're going to be diving into something I think a lot of folks have on their minds, and that is EV battery safety.
Oh, yeah, big one.
Yeah, we got some great material from Dr. C over at CATL.
That's right, yeah.
A lot of people out there, when they see EVs, they think fire hazard, especially after a crash. But how true is that?
Yeah, that's a good question.
So what do you think? Are EV batteries these like ticking time bombs just waiting to explode, or is there more to the story?
Well, I think it's easy to kind of like buy into those headlines, right?
Right, yeah, those pictures are scary.
Yeah, those pictures are definitely scary, but I think the reality is it's a lot more complex.
Okay, so you're saying we need to look past those, like fiery crash test dummy pictures and actually like understand how these things are built.
Exactly. Yeah, and I think a good starting point is just thinking about where the battery pack is actually located on a car, right? Like usually it's like nestled right up into the frame of the vehicle.
Oh, so it's like protected?
Yeah, it's got this like extra layer of protection. And then you've got the front and rear beams on most cars, which are designed to crumple in a crash.
Oh, right, like crumple zones.
Exactly. So they absorb like a huge amount of the force. So in like your typical fender bender, front end or rear end collision, a lot of that energy is getting dissipated before it even reaches the battery.
Okay, so sounds like for like everyday driving, the battery's actually pretty well protected.
Yeah, I'd say so, at least for those like, run-of-the-mill collisions.
Okay, so where does it get tricky then?
Well, I think where it gets a little more complicated is when you start looking at side impacts.
Oh, right, because there's just like less car there, right?
Exactly. There's not as much room for those crumple zones, and the side beams are obviously a lot smaller.
Right.
And CATL, they've really recognized this as kind of like a vulnerability, and they've gone to some pretty impressive lengths to reinforce their battery packs, specifically for side impacts.
Okay, so how are they making those sides stronger then?
Well, a couple of things they're doing is they've expanded those energy absorbing areas on the sides of the pack. So it's kind of like putting on like extra padding on a boxer's gloves.
Ah, so they can take more of a punch.
Exactly. And then on top of that, they've increased the number of like bolt fixation points. So the connection between the pack and the car body is like super tight.
So like they're really clamping it down.
Yeah, exactly. It's almost like they're welded together. But then here's the really interesting part. They've even like reinforced the connections inside the battery itself.
Oh, wow.
So all those cells and the cooling plates and everything, they all kind of work together as like one solid unit.
So like it's not just the outside that's tough, the insides are tough too?
Yeah, exactly. It's this like really intricate system that allows that impact energy to spread out over a much larger area.
That's really cool. But what about the underside of the battery? All those potholes and debris on the road, it seems like that would be pretty vulnerable.
Yeah, you're right. That's another area where you could potentially see some damage, but CATL's thought of that too. They've actually thickened the aluminum bottom plate considerably.
Oh, so like a shield.
Yeah, pretty much like a heavy-duty shield. And then between that plate and the actual battery cells, they've put in this layer of like impact-resistant foam.
Ah, so it's like bubble wrap for the battery.
Yeah, basically, it's pretty ingenious.
That is ingenious. Mm-hmm. Okay, so we've talked a lot about the physical protection around these batteries, but what about protecting them from the inside out? What kind of technological safeguards are there?
Yeah, that's where things get really interesting because it's not just about like the brute force protection, it's also about like the smarts built into the system.
Okay, so what's like the brains of the operation when it comes to battery safety?
Well, I think one of the biggest things that CATL has been working on is their NP 2.0 technology.
NP 2.0, what's that all about?
So this is a really innovative way to prevent something called thermal runaway, which is basically this chain reaction that can happen within the battery that can ultimately lead to a fire.
Oh, that sounds bad.
Yeah. It's definitely not good, but you can think of NP 2.0 as like a firewall.
Oh, within the battery itself.
Exactly. It basically isolates any problems that might crop up within a single cell and prevents them from spreading to the rest of the pack.
So like containing a small fire before it can become a big one.
Exactly. And on top of that, they've been working really closely with the OEMs, the car companies, to implement this rapid power shutoff mechanism. So in the event of like a crash or any damage to the battery, the power to the battery cuts off in like 2 milliseconds.
2 milliseconds. That's incredibly fast.
Yeah, it's twice as fast as like the industry average.
Wow.
Yeah.
So they really have thought of everything to prevent, like the worst case scenario.
Yeah, a ton of technology is dedicated to that.
It's really impressive. And, I think it's really reassuring to know that these batteries are a lot tougher than they might seem at first glance.
Yeah, absolutely. They've got layers of protection, both physically and like from a tech standpoint.
And it's clear that, the engineers who are designing these things, they're really taking safety seriously.
For sure.
Makes you wonder what other innovations are on the horizon for EV safety,
Yeah.
right? Like, what's the next big thing we should be looking out for?
Yeah, it's definitely a rapidly evolving field.
It is, and I think it's one that's, only going to become more and more important as EVs become more and more popular.
Absolutely.
All right, well, on that note, I think we'll wrap things up here, but as always, keep those questions coming. We'll do our best to keep you informed on all the latest developments in the world of EVs.
Sounds good.
Until next time, everybody drive safe.
See ya.
Please like this video and subscribe to our channel. For more detail, you can visit our blog website www.evergreentechtips.com.